You're flying over Antarctica. Just you, the endless ice, and the hum of the engines. Then the snow breaks. Below you, forests, rivers, even a mammoth trudging through a green valley that shouldn't exist. Your instruments start to spin, your controls freeze, and suddenly a voice cuts through the static. Calm, German accent, calling you by name. They say you're safe. They say you're welcome. But no one told you anyone was down here. So why did Admiral Byrd go silent for 3 hours? And what did he see that made the US government shut it all down?
In his diary, which was discovered by his son after his death, Admiral Byrd tells an extraordinary story.
Admiral Byrd heard there was an entrance to the center of the Earth through the South Pole. And he took planes into the South, under the South Pole. And when he did that, he discovered that as he flew over the pole, suddenly he's looking at things that shouldn't be there. I mean, it was temperate. His squadron flew under the Earth, into the Earth.
It turns into this lush and green area, and he can't even believe his eyes. But that's just the beginning of his extraordinary story. He tells how all of a sudden he starts to see a shimmering rainbow city that's made of crystal.
This story is said to come from his diaries, not his published account of the trip, but something he held back and then later was suppressed by government authorities that found it frightening.
Admiral Richard E. Byrd wasn't your average explorer. He was a national hero, the kind they gave parades to, literally. 3 ticker tape parades in New York City, one in 1926, another in 1927, and a third in 1930. He was the youngest admiral in U.S. Navy history, a recipient of the Medal of Honor, Navy Cross, and the Distinguished Flying Cross. When Byrd spoke, people listened, and when he disappeared for 3 hours over Antarctica during a top-secret government mission, people should have asked a lot more questions. Between 1928 and 1947, Byrd led 5 expeditions to Antarctica. The first 2 were scientific, privately funded. Cameras, meteorology stations, geological studies, the usual. But the last 3 were backed by the US government, especially Operation Highjump in 1946. It was officially billed as a cold weather training exercise, but the scale, it didn't match the excuse. Highjump was massive. Over 4,700 men, 13 ships, 33 aircraft, and a full submarine task force. They brought destroyers, aircraft carriers, fuel tankers, cargo ships, and planes modified for extreme climates. And they were armed to the teeth. Why? To test equipment in the snow? Or to confront something already down there? They planned to stay 6 to 8 months. They left after just 40 days. The excuse? Unexpected bad weather. But February is peak summer in Antarctica, warmest conditions of the year. No one offered a better explanation. And Byrd? He returned home and went silent, except for one odd interview. After Highjump, Byrd made a stop in Chile. There he spoke to a journalist and made a cryptic statement that the US would soon be threatened by an enemy capable of flying from pole to pole with incredible speed. That quote vanished from most records, and so did Byrd, from the press, from public appearances, from any real explanation. Then came the diary. Released years later after his death, the document claimed to be Byrd's own words, a flight log, and it describes something impossible. Forests under the ice, rivers, a green valley in the most frozen place on Earth. He wrote about losing sight of the sun, about malfunctioning instruments, and finally, disc-shaped aircraft with German markings, mammoth-like creatures, and a glowing city made of crystal. So what happened during those missing hours? And why did the US government act like it never happened? Here's where things stop sounding like military protocol and start sounding like a movie the Pentagon wouldn't greenlight. Operation Highjump was supposed to test equipment in extreme cold. That's the official line.
Operation Highjump was a massive operation. It's like a World War II invasion, but it also gives rise to some various theories, because why would we send an entire fleet to Antarctica just to do scientific research? Do we really care that much about science, or is there some secret government goal down there that we don't know about?
But eyewitness accounts from sailors on the mission tell a different story of unexplained aircraft sightings, radio malfunctions, and planes that vanished without distress calls. One pilot reportedly returned visibly shaken, repeating the phrase, "They came out of the ice." That quote was never mentioned in the Navy's debriefing report. According to government documents released decades later through FOIA requests, the operation was abruptly terminated due to casualties and mechanical failure. Yet buried in those memos are vague references to enemy engagement and unexpected aerial interference. One classified report, dated March 10, 1947, refers cryptically to an advanced aerial threat, possibly non-terrestrial in origin. That sentence was redacted in later versions. Byrd himself was flown directly to Washington, D.C., and debriefed behind closed doors for over 6 hours. According to military personnel present at the Pentagon, he appeared disturbed and hesitant to speak openly. He was placed under strict orders of silence and assigned a medical team for mental evaluation. The official reason? Stress. The unofficial one? He saw something they couldn't explain, and they didn't want him talking about it. Then things got darker. In 1949, Secretary of Defense James Forrestal, one of the few top officials who had full knowledge of Operation Highjump, was suddenly institutionalized. Reports claimed he was mentally unstable. Days later, he fell. Some say jumped from a window at the Bethesda Naval Hospital. The window was sealed shut from the inside. No investigation was conducted. Forrestal had allegedly been pushing to make certain Antarctica findings public. Not long after, Byrd's own son was found dead in an abandoned warehouse. The cause? Malnutrition and dehydration. How does the son of a celebrated admiral and prominent Massachusetts family die from something like that? No foul play was suspected. Case closed. And then there's the treaty. In 1959, 12 countries, including Cold War enemies, signed the Antarctic Treaty, agreeing that no military activity, mining, or private exploration would be allowed. To this day, the treaty holds. No wars, no drilling, no independent visitors, just a frozen peace zone nobody's allowed to question. They said it was for scientific research. But that raises the bigger question, since when do world superpowers agree to stop fighting? Unless they're hiding something much bigger beneath the ice. Now let's talk about what Admiral Byrd allegedly saw, and why it scared the US government enough to bury everything under red tape and silence. According to the leaked diary, Byrd's plane lost contact with command for exactly 3 hours. During that blackout, he didn't just fly over snow. He flew over a lush green valley with flowing rivers and dense forests in the middle of Antarctica. He saw mammoth-like creatures roaming the land. And then they came. Disc-shaped aircraft with radiant metallic sheen and swastikas carved into the side. Silent, fast, impossible. They didn't attack, they flanked him. Then they spoke, over his own radio. A voice with a Germanic accent called him by name, told him he was safe, and assured him they would take control of his aircraft. He wasn't flying anymore, they were. They brought him to a city made of shimmering crystal, a city beneath the ice. Tall, pale figures with blonde hair greeted him. They spoke English. They knew who he was. They claimed to be part of an ancient race called the Arani, the protectors of the inner earth. Byrd was brought before a figure known only as the Master. What he was told there is where this story leaps from conspiracy into existential threat. The Master warned that humanity had become too dangerous. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had triggered alarms beneath the surface. The Arani had long avoided contact, but nuclear warfare risked destabilizing the planet itself. They had no choice but to act. According to the diary, the Arani had sent emissaries to world governments. Byrd was to carry a message back to the surface, a warning, stop using nuclear weapons or face extinction. Byrd agreed. He was escorted back to his plane. It flew itself out of the inner world, his controls returned, and radio contact was restored. The story ends there, but the implications don't. What if Operation Highjump wasn't a training mission, but a failed first contact? What if the sudden peace around Antarctica isn't about protecting penguins, but containing what's underneath? And here's the final twist. Declassified U.S. Navy maps from 1947 show no-fly zones directly over the region Byrd claimed to have seen the city. To this day, those zones still exist. Oh, and one more thing. In a vault at the U.S. Patent Office, there's a filed schematic for a gravity propulsion disk dated 1943, under a German name. So if Byrd met a myth, why does our government have the blueprints? Coincidences? Maybe. But how do you explain the Antarctic Treaty? Signed in 1959, still in place today. Over 50 countries, including rivals like the US, Russia, and China, all agreeing to protect Antarctica and keep the public out. No drilling, no military, no independent exploration, just research, monitored, restricted, and controlled. What are they really protecting? Is it the environment or something buried under the ice? We may never know. But one thing is certain, Byrd came back different. He warned of a threat that could fly from pole to pole. And after that, he barely spoke again. Because maybe the real danger wasn't what Byrd found, but what he brought back with him. So here's the question they don't want you to ask. What if the cover-up isn't about protecting secrets? What if it's about protecting us from the truth? Drop your theory in the comments. Was it an ancient civilization, Nazi tech, Hollow Earth, or something we're still not ready to understand? And if you want more stories like this, ones you won't hear in school or the evening news, hit that subscribe button, join the investigation, and help us keep digging. Because down there, beneath the ice, behind the silence, something is waiting. And it's been watching us for a long time.